Let's shift to the third major tenet of red pill philosophy, the idea of women as manipulators. Sometimes a bit of an extension of the evolutionary psychology, a lot of red pillers argue that the feminist anti-man conspiracy stems from and is perpetuated by women's manipulative nature. Is that a bit on the nose? Well, let's go back to the Red Pill Constitution and read Section 4, Women's Manipulative Nature. Women are Machiavellian by nature. In comparison to the average man, they are far more proficient in matters of persuasion and general social manipulation. The theoretical evolutionary basis for this sex difference is that due to smaller body mass and inferior musculature, women evolved to attract and use men as tools rather than directly compete with them. Can I get "women are Machiavellian by nature" tattooed on my knuckles? This makes the pronunciation of female strength their propensity to be mentally rather than physically violent. Physical violence is outlawed, whereas mental abuse is not. With a suppression of physical violence without an equal suppression of mental, women are at a social advantage. What is mentally violent supposed to mean? The only thing that this could be a reference to is psychological or emotional abuse, which is the result when you try to search up the phrase, but I get the feeling the author is intentionally leaving it a bit vague so that readers will conflate psychological abuse with women using their brain for personal benefits. Like, yeah, women can sometimes do shitty things. I'm not going to make excuses for that kind of behavior, but there needs to be some sort of justification or explanation or anything more than literally just arguing something that doesn't even have a definition and thus isn't arguing at all. And we can fill in the gaps in our heads, and I feel like the author was hoping readers would, but that just proves that the author has no fucking idea what they're talking about. The intolerance for physical violence, coupled with the tolerance for mental violence, is what allows women to bully and socially dominate without being held accountable by a system of law. Men are, as such, forced to learn to become as apt in mental violence as women or face social disadvantage. So basically what I'm reading from this is that the author either believes or wants their audience to believe that women are all lying manipulative abusers, and that as an extension, men must learn how to also be lying manipulative abusers in order to keep up. This is sort of weirdly revealing into why red pillers feel the way they do. I almost can't help but feel that the author is trying to morally justify their own already abusive behavior towards women by arguing that women are conspiring to do the same thing to them first. Even if that's not true of the author, it creates a situation in which the reader is vindicated for their own shitty behaviors towards women by teaching the reader to appeal to conspiratorial nonsense. The law does not criminalize emotional violence against men, where physical violence is illegal, but typically more so if it is male on female rather than female on male. Emotional violence is a question of personal morality and therefore not legislated against. Where a man's instinct is to hit, a woman's is to make you miserable. Arguably, mental wounds can be just as harmful, if not more so than physical. In summation, women tend to be more emotionally aggressive than men. Well, emotional violence isn't really a thing, but emotional abuse is criminalized in some areas, and that's true regardless of the gender of the victim. I love, though, how at the end of asserting a ton of arguments that don't really mean anything, they end with "in summation," as though they've somehow revealed some deeper truth instead of just complaining about women excessively. Female hypergamy is very binary in its approach to men. A man is either deemed superior or inferior. If a woman believes a man inferior to her, he's sexually invisible. Only when a woman deems a man superior does he become visible. Women want men who demonstrably exude power in a way that makes them feel inferior. When a woman feels inferior to a man, she is attracted to him. We call this hypergamy, a proclivity to date up and/or social climb. As an affectation of hypergamy, women are highly sensitive to signifiers of high status, good genes, wealth, confidence, popularity, etc. Can I say, just for the record, that this sounds a little bit like the voice of a man who got all of his knowledge on women from porn? Like, yeah, just that phrase, women want men who demonstrably exude power in a way that makes them feel inferior. This just sort of pinpoints what is so unnerving about the red pill community. Like, yeah, there are some women who feel that way, but tons of women won't feel that way, and even women who do won't feel it as a universal constant of their existence. Women don't define ourselves solely by our sexuality and our relationship to men. That's really just what creepy men think we do, because they project that onto us because they define us by our sexuality and our relationship to them. Let me get a little bit personal for just a moment. I am attracted to men sometimes, Not all the time, often enough though that I've developed crushes on a number of people, both in my personal life and celebrity crushes, who have had a higher social status than myself. And I'll be honest and say that them having a higher social status is one thing that I find attractive about them, in addition to them having some sort of superior skill, in my case usually musical skill, that I wish I could have myself. So if I were, say, 13 years old and had read this article before really being able to comprehend how bullshit it was, this would have sounded more reasonable to me than it does now. The reason why I bring that personal element into it is that I've also been attracted to plenty of men who are of lower social status than myself by red pill or metric, and status doesn't define my attraction to people much at all. I'm perfectly fine dating someone who's not some great status symbol, but the dynamic of an individual's interests and desires can be skewed. If I refer only to the side of me who's attracted to people of higher status, then I make it appear as though that's all I'm attracted to. But humans are more complicated than that, more nuanced and more, well, human. And that's what articles like this do, is they essentially dehumanize not just an individual like me, but entire groups, an entire gender even. By taking something that may be a common experience among some women and portraying it as the sum total of all women's personalities and motivations, and portraying this as inherently manipulative and evil, the article reaches such a degree of dishonesty or possibly delusion that I'm just not comfortable with. And a key component of red pill rhetoric is that ability to take something vaguely relatable or believable and then stretch it so far, but using a masculinized presentation and a matter-of-fact speaking style to portray it as scientifically legitimated. The kicker is, a woman need not necessarily trade sex for commitment. This is the implied contract, and mutually respectable arrangements are where women demand commitment for their sex, and men demand sex for their commitment. However, much like men who enjoy sex devoid commitment, women enjoy commitment devoid sex. Where a woman can get commitment without giving sex, she shall become friends with a man. This is the friend zone, a purgatory where men willing to commit to a woman without any promise of sex from her, in return, go to slowly erode every last portion of their dignity. This man is the male equivalent. This man is the male equivalent of a slut. Because much like promiscuous women lower the price of sex, a sexless yet committed man lowers the price of commitment. Remember everyone, men who are in the friend zone are sluts. I don't even know how to dignify that. Now let's go back to the misandry bubble. As a result, women are the first to want into a monogamous relationship, and the first to want out. This is neither right nor wrong, merely natural. What is wrong, however, is the cultural and societal pressure to shame men into committing to marriage under the pretense that they are afraid of commitment due to some Peter Pan complex, while there is no longer the corresponding traditional shame that was reserved for women who destroyed the marriage, despite the fact that 90% of divorces are initiated by women. Furthermore, when women destroy the commitment, there is great harm to children, and the woman demands present and future payments from the man she is abandoning. A man who refuses to marry is neither harming innocent minors nor expecting years of payments from the woman. This absurd double standard has invisible but major cost to society. Alright, so having looked at divorce statistics, the reason why women initiate divorce is usually because they're unhappy with their husbands. On top of this, while it is true that children stand to deal with a lot of stress from divorce, it turns out that women stand to be harmed very significantly by both marriage and divorce, while men stand to benefit from these things a lot of the time. Yes, including divorce. It's also worth noting that this article took misogynistic norms and tried to portray them in a way that makes it seem like it's women's fault, when in all actuality, women are most heavily the ones pressured to get married, and often have to put in the most work into the marriage. A combination of power dynamics and male privilege means that men end up having to take on the least responsibility and the least emotional labor towards marriage and child-rearing, which then leads to the dissatisfaction that leads to divorce. To put it bluntly, women often get divorced because men simply aren't good enough to them. One of the most depressing aspects of this women as manipulators narrative is that it forgets or even intentionally ignores that women are human beings. Red pill rhetoric seems to expect women to be perfect in ways that are convoluted and inconsistent. And they create a no-win scenario in which the only option is to hate women. And what is that supposed to mean for women who accept these narratives? Are they supposed to just hate themselves, or keep up with a constantly changing and incoherent narrative that men define for them? Or what, die? That's one of the biggest problems with the red pill community. It's how they perpetuate misogyny, not just through accusations against women they dislike, but the both subtle and overt policing of women they do like. It becomes an unavoidable exercise in devaluing women under the easily refuted assertion that women are actually the ones devaluing men. It's just terrible. Now let me be clear. I believe a woman should get to decide how many children she bears, or even whether or not to have any children at all. However, a childless old woman should not then be able to extract resources from the children of other women. Fair is fair, and the obligation of working-age people to support the elderly should not be socialized in order to subsidize women who chose not to reproduce. This is some next-level dangerous perspective to have. The author of the article is saying that women who didn't have kids shouldn't be allowed to collect Social Security after retirement because they didn't have kids. Like, that's so many different levels of fucked up that it's hard to even respond to. What about men who don't have children? Should they also be forced to starve when they get old? It's absurd to argue that you think women should have autonomy and then argue that we need to systematically disincentivize autonomy and basically force women into childrearing, which is just like on a level of contempt for women that almost parallels the world of fucking Mad Max Fury Road. The amount of hoops that women are supposed to jump through to prove that we're not all lying manipulators out for personal gain is increasingly intense with each bad argument. Now, this next article I'd like to read from isn't actually directly about women being manipulators, but that's sort of an emergent theme of the article. Plus, I think this one will be a lot of fun. It's called What Exactly is a Red Pill Woman? And it's from the website Married Man's Sex Life, and it lists off a bullet point list of what makes the ideal woman in this particular writer's eyes. Let's look. 1. Understands that physical appearance and her looks are what attracts men's sexual interest. She stays in shape, and while every waking minute she may not be dressed to the nines, neither does she get mistaken for a slob. She looks good for insert age. Okay, so first and foremost, a woman must be hot and attractive to a man. That seems fake, but okay. Understands that what she does with her vagina always has some sort of consequence. Whoa. Wait, what? What is that even supposed to mean? Do they realize that vaginas are used for more than just sex with men? This is some weird body-shaming bullshit, and like, what are women supposed to do with this information? Just like lock themselves up in a chastity belt for their man? Understands that there is a sexual marketplace, and that women have an earlier peak of sexual desirability than men do. That the point 1 stuff comes very easily to young women, and that the point 2 and 3 stuff pays off over the longer term. Ah yes, my favorite place to shop, the sexual marketplace. This is another example where they're just saying words that, since undefined, mean nothing, and thus they're really just saying nothing. Plus, I thought these guys loved the free marketplace, so why are they trying to police women's sexuality? Wouldn't that be sexual socialism? Actually, sign me up for that. That sounds fun. Understands that men are the gatekeepers of commitment, and that committed men place extreme value on sexual loyalty. I'm sorry, but aren't men the keymasters? This is what I'm talking about, how there's an emergent theme of women as manipulators. The idea that men place commitment sort of implies that women naturally are inclined towards being non-committed, and thus they need men to control them. What I find especially creepy about this sort of supposedly positive side of the red pill coin when it comes to women is that it has a lot of the makings of an abusive relationship. They're basically arguing that women should allow men to abuse us in order to be proper women. Is aware of her own sexuality, and understands what in a man attracts her and turns her on, namely hypergamy, alpha traits, why she may fitness test, and so on. What the hell? I thought hypergamy was supposed to be a bad thing. I guess that's only when women do it, though. Anyways, I'm pretty sure most women are aware of their own sexuality, but fuck off with this understand what in a man attracts her and turns her on. Like, I'm already well aware of what I find attractive in men, and it isn't fucking alpha traits, which we'll get to soon. Can articulate things that she did wrong in her prior relationships. Even if the guy was clearly the greater cause of relationship failure, she can acknowledge things she could have done better, or differently. She can think consciously about her relationships, rather than simply follow her emotions from moment to moment. has a learning curve. So I'd like to share an anecdote that I feel helps contextualize why this bothers me so much. I've known a lot of women who are or were religious, and I've especially known a lot of Mormon women. Now, the Mormon Church is an explicitly patriarchal society, and what I mean is not only are all of the leaders in the church on pretty much every level men, but they actually refer to themselves as patriarchs. Tragically, I've also known a number of people in the church who have been sexually assaulted, including some by church leaders. When they opened up about these issues to church officials, repeatedly the church's response was, "You are not wrong for having been assaulted, but there's still things you could have done better, and you need to repent for the bad things that you did that led to or followed your assault." The mentality here is that women are not innocent in a situation of severe victimhood. An explicitly patriarchal society will try to reinforce itself through making women doubt themselves and disempowering women at every turn. That's why I find this particular paragraph so telling, because it shows that while they refuse to believe in a patriarchy, they actively try to construct one in their own little niche community by doing all of the same things that a patriarchy does. And my reference point is a church that explicitly considers itself a patriarchy. Women know how to be introspective. We're often better at it than men because we're taught how to do so, rather than being actively taught not to empathize like what sometimes happens with men. The strange thing is that even if we take a more lenient look at the kinds of advice on offer here, we find that at best, men are failing to understand women at a basic level and then trying to ask us stuff that we're already conditioned to do, often to our own detriment. I already constantly try to figure out what I did wrong in situations where I was made the victim of someone's shitty behaviors. I don't need red pill men to tell me to somehow do that harder. One last one. 18 has a sense of humor. Speak for yourself. Alright, now let's watch a video about women being manipulative, called Red Pill Date, The Making of a MGTOW.
I like to wear slutty clothes for male attention, but act offended when I get that attention if it is from a guy I am not interested in. I enjoy the privileges my beauty buys me.
Oh god, what the hell is this? I love that in order to make women look bad, they had to create a fake woman because they couldn't find any real women to play the role for them. My favorite part of this video though is the guy on the left. He's just sitting here for like minutes at a time, just like, yep, this all sounds reasonable to me. He actually kind of looks like the fucking PC guy from those old PC Mac ads. He actually kind of looks like his NyQuil just kicked in and he's ready for bed. Alright, screw this, on to the next topic.
Power of beauty.